Welcome to the Grief Recovery Hour with Sharon Brubaker. You are listening to KHTS, your hometown station. My name is Sandi Atmore, and I am sitting in today for Sharon Brubaker. Now, if you are listening to this show, there is a high probability that your heart is broken. It may be broken from a death or a divorce or one of the other 40 losses that we can experience in our lifetimes. I am not here to tell you how you feel. You know how you feel, and it probably isn't good. At most, I can share with you how I felt when my loss occurred. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. Her name is Shayla. So welcome, Shayla.
Thank you, Sandi.
And today, what we're going to talk about today, we've been talking about this a little bit. I've had the privilege and honor of sitting in with Sharon as we've done these shows on #MeToo. There's a whole consciousness, I believe, in our society about sexual abuse and the impact and the pervasiveness of this event. And so we've had some opportunity to talk about this, and I think it's so important that we're speaking about it. And I'm really excited to be joined by Shayla. She has a powerful story. I feel like she's still in the middle of her story, and I'm going to have her share in just a moment. But it's so important, I think, sometimes that we get to hear from people that are on their journeys. We were kind of talking before the show started about how sometimes we can get to that other side. I've arrived, and now let me share. But I think our power really is in sharing in our vulnerability. So just for starters, if you haven't heard my story, I do have a lot of sexual abuse in my story. I grew up in a home where there were two ingredients, a lot of abuse and a lot of denial. And so there was physical abuse, sexual abuse, there was verbal abuse, and it happened over and over and over again. I was raped at a very young age. I was raped again. And again, that other ingredient in my home was denial. And so I really went into my life pretending like everything was fine and not looking at all the darkness that was in my heart. And so it came out in all these ways. I always say that what we don't put light on within our heart comes out sideways. And my sideways was a lot of destructive behaviors. It was alcohol, drugs, very performance, very perfectionistic. I kind of had that duality of I looked like very successful on the outside, crumbling a lot on the inside. And it got to a point where I was using meth every single day. Wow. And then I walked away from meth, and that's great. But my heart was still broken. And I discovered grief recovery, the grief recovery method, which we're also going to talk more about during this time. And it was this process that helped me to identify what I had lost and grieve where the broken parts of my heart needed to express their sadness. And it really changed my life drastically. And so I'm really excited that we get to talk about this topic. So,
Me too.
Shayla, thank you so much for being here. Again, it's so courageous of you to be here.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
Absolutely. So why don't you just share a little bit about you, where you are today, who you are, just kind of invite us into your world.
Sure. Well, I've been in, I'd say about 2 years of dedicated healing for a lot of trauma that I had previously thought did not exist in my story. I knew that I grew up in a dysfunctional family. I use that term, like, yeah, dysfunctional family, grew up the youngest of a big Mormon family, and just figured, oh yeah, that we were impoverished in my early years, and then became middle class, and I still got the hand-me-downs. And yeah, I was bullied a lot in school when we moved to Indio, and I was the minority. So I knew that I had a lot of hardship, but I didn't remember a lot of let's say, first grade, 6, 7 years old. And I didn't really think that there was anything to remember. I just thought, oh, those are formative years. You don't really remember. And I found it so baffling that in like our different grief recovery, like doing the life graph or doing, letters to just kind of address different parts of your life, I was in the process of graphing my entire life again, when doing, I don't know if I can mention just the graphing, what was it? The breaking beliefs that you offer. Yeah. And just looking at my pre-Indio years, the bullying days, I thought that's where most of my insecurity and low self-esteem came from. And that's where I was like, oh, I know eventually I need to deal with that. And I was just a high functioning, intelligent, gifted. People would say, you're so talented. But then when I looked at my whole life, I was getting stuck in something in the Indio years, my 6 years and younger. And I started to develop a lot of body symptoms, like pain, chronic pain, and migraines and unexplainable tendinitis. No other treatments were working. And it was working with you, actually, that you told me, like, this is not permanent. I need you to believe that this is something that's coming out from your trauma that's expressing itself somatically. And little, did I know that you were spot on, because that day is when I discovered the tension myositis syndrome diagnosis, which helped me to validate that, yes, this is emotional, and the pain did subside as I started to address the real trauma and memories of sexual abuse and memories of rape and incest and just even more layers of horror that I thought I had been spared, really convinced that sexual abuse was the one type of abuse that I had been spared. So yeah, without going into all the details, I'm still in the process of healing, as I have recently identified, as you know, a layer of trauma that is incomprehensible, and that most people hopefully will never, ever have to experience, let alone imagine exists in the world. And trying to figure out how to function in society, and really relating to the war veterans before PTSD was a thing, and how they came back really traumatized and unable to integrate in society again. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is just trying to figure out, how do I integrate and not, I can't perform like I used to. I can't be who I used to be, which was a front person. It was a survivor trying to survive with all these broken arms and wounds internally, like emotionally, and trying to do what everyone else does, and wondering why I feel like it takes so much more energy for me to do that, and I can't seem to get where they are, and dying inside. And so now, I can tell when I'm pretending, and it's exhausting. And so I can't pretend anymore. I'm done with that. And
which is huge.
Yeah, it is huge. And I know I can feel a new energy welling up inside of me from just stepping out of denial, and the pain, the body pains have gone away significantly.
Yeah.
And they'll still pop up when I'm getting triggered PTSD or whatever. But knowing that it's not because I'm bad, or that I'm defective, or that it's just I'm weird, and knowing it's actually just because there's a wound that needs some healing and attention, that didn't get healing and attention because society had no idea it existed or validated that it is a wound, and wounds can heal, and they can be like they never were. And so that keeps me going. That keeps me healing. And I look back on the last 2 years, and I see the wounds that have been healing, but I'm just uncovering more. But I know that eventually, at the end of this journey, there will be complete healing. And that's what keeps me hopeful, even in the midst of just the terrifying reliving of as I work through the trauma.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And, there's a couple things kind of, popping into my head as we're talking. And one of those is, I think, a lot of times we can have this perspective of what the face of a loss, and I am going to refer to sexual abuse as a loss, and we can definitely talk about that more also, but what the face of that loss looks like. I think a lot of times we think it's somebody who's maybe how I described it, using drugs and alcohol, and maybe living this life, and they're promiscuous and they're doing all these things, but we know that the face of sexual abuse can look very different for different people. What was your life like before really kind of going on this journey? What would an outsider have seen in Shayla's life?
Yeah. Well, definitely super talented, gifted person. I'd have friends constantly telling me, like, what can't you do? You do balloon animals, you do you play the piano a little bit, you write songs on your guitar, you paint paintings, basically that Renaissance woman. And that's something I would get praised from in my family as well, just being gifted. And I think I banked on that to hide the pain, to hide the little girl that was just so broken, that just needed to be held and comforted and told that it wasn't her fault, and that it's not who she is. but I split that part of me because there wasn't room for that. I grew up in a home that was very neglectful. I was, admittedly neglected, especially after my little sister died when I was 18 months old and she was only 3 weeks old. And so I'm sure I triggered things in my own parents, and because they didn't deal with their grief and probably still haven't, there is still a schism in our relationship. And I've had to learn how to let go of relationships that are, that have required me to be the giver to continue the connection, because I was so desperate for any love and attention. And I think that was what I used my talents for, is to get attention, the attention that I lacked growing up, to feel a sense of validation that I do have something good to contribute. And all those things are still part of who I am, but I have been divided within myself, and a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand, right? I've been at war with myself, and it's the creative energy of that little girl that has been missing, because I've had to shut her in a closet and hide her because I'm afraid of what people are going to think of me if they see her. And so my life before before dealing with this sexual abuse, I had a relationship that was leading towards marriage, and just really successful, teacher, have a master's degree. Like, I was finishing my master's program. All these outward signs of achievement and things on my bucket list, things that I wanted my life to look like. And I worked really hard to make sure my life looked like what I wanted to look like. And that's another reason I believe that I blocked out at a very young age what happened, because there was no room for that to happen in a successful life, in a life that was touched by God. And as a Christian, believer, like, that's a whole nother element of trauma that I'm uncovering, is just how much faulty belief systems that I've been projecting onto God, even like projecting onto Christianity, or like even how the world can project it, like even in religious circles can project faulty ideology or religious beliefs onto God and the Bible and what that means about me. So I was a good Christian, quote unquote. Even as a Mormon, I was a good girl. I never acted out. I didn't do the drugs. I didn't have the sex or the rock and roll, or, I love 80s music, but so some rock and roll. But I had that typical good girl outlook and persona. And I really believed that that's why God was going to bless me with success, with a great marriage, with a great family of my own one day. And here I am, in my going into later 30s, and I actually gave up a relationship in order to dig into this healing process. I chose to dig into the trauma instead of just moving on, like some people would encourage me to do, in not in so many words, but that's the meta message. Not letting it hinder me in my life, and so that leaves me where I was before, which was denial, amnesia, splitting off myself, disassociating. And so that's what my life looked like before. Success, friendship, serving in the church, doing good deeds.
But you bring up such a great point, and I could understand how somebody listening to this would think, well, then why would you delve into that stuff, right? And why would you delve into those things? And you said something that I think is really key, and you said, my parents had their own things. They hadn't grieved their own losses, and it's absolutely true, right? That when we experience things like sexual abuse, there's a lot of loss, right? Yep. There's a lot of things that we lose. And then you're kind of expressing and articulating, and this is how I dealt with that. This is, what you are describing, where somebody might say, oh, that sounds like such a great life, was really a way to cope. You're kind of, kind of articulating, like, this is how I coped. And I can relate to that. I know, even though I was more of the, the drugs and all that kind of stuff, one of the things that I did do was perform. And I did go up the corporate ladder of success, and I did, work out like crazy and try to have the perfect body. And if I could just have these things, then maybe I would feel better inside. And so again, sometimes people might have an outward perception, but what you were feeling inside was very different.
Yep.
So why don't we spend a few minutes, first and foremost, identifying some of the losses that we might experience when it comes to sexual abuse. Because I think sometimes we use the word, it's a traumatic event, I've had a trauma, and I agree. And at the same time, there's so many things that we quote unquote lose.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you feel like were losses for you?
Well, there are many, as you said. I think the biggest one I can think of first and foremost is my identity with myself and my worth in the world, like my worth, because I think we've talked about this before. This abuse happened to me. Why me? Why is this happening to me? It's because I'm outside of his protection. I'm outside of what, everybody talks about, like he's going to be there for you. And some of my abuse involved messages that were like literally saying like, he's not going to be there for you.
Right.
And that this is happening because he's abandoned you, or because you belong to the darkness. And so, but like as such a young age, 3 or younger, just being told these things by authority, like any adult is an authority to a child, especially if they're family or if, the closer you are with them. And if they're in, like, if we talk about the Catholic Church and what's happening there, if they represent God, how much bigger is that authority?
Sure.
And so all a child is left with, already a child is thinking in egocentric terms because they have no concept of it being someone else's fault. Everything is their fault. So if you add on to that, then God is condoning that, yes, it is your fault. And this figure that's representing God or your family or whatever is so important and ingrained in a child, then yes, the internalized feeling of shame and defectiveness and evil, like wickedness, really, I am an instrument devoted to evil.
So it's like you've lost goodness.
Yes. And my sense of being able to be good.
That's a huge loss.
It's huge.
Yeah, that's a huge loss. Even though we know that it's perceived, right? The truth is, oh yes, you are good and you can still be good. But for a child, I've lost my ability to be good.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think along with that, right, is there's such breaches in trust, right?
Yes.
I've lost trust.
Safety.
I've lost safety. I've lost my boundaries, my sense of personal space or boundaries. And, I think one of the other things, obviously, that can go along with this too, and I'm sure for you this is true too, is my loss of protection, my loss of what I need as a child. So my parental relationships,
Yes.
I've lost mom and dad in the sense that a mom and dad should be in my world.
Yes.
And so all of these losses are happening, and they're such significant losses to be grieved.
Yeah.
Right.
And even starting this healing journey and 2 years ago, really digging in and knowing in a way that I would be losing my world. Really, I built 30-something years of a life that I had imagined. I was going to lose everything, my whole identity, and the relationships that I'd built up in my mind because I wanted a family so badly. I wanted my family to be something that was good. So I worked really hard to make that in my mind and to spend so much of my energy trying to have a relationship with parents that it wasn't even healthy to have relationships with. And so I lost the semblance of even having a family. I lost everything starting this journey. That's how it felt.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's a really big thing. And we're gonna break in just a moment. But on the other side of the break, I do want us to talk more about how grieving those losses helps us to be in the truth and helps us to truly live. Because I think that's one of the things that's a huge misconception is, well, if I open this door, I'm going to lose everything. And then what? Then what's my life going to look like? What are my relationships going to look like? It's going to be worse. And we're really here to say that as hard as the truth can be, and as much pain as is in our hearts oftentimes, that when we have the tools to grieve those experiences, we can truly live, right? And there is something on the other side.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important message for us to take. So we're going to go on a break right now, and when we get back, we'll talk further about this.
Great.
Daily Imprints is the premier one-stop shop for custom embroidery, screen printing, and promotional products in the Santa Clarita Valley. Owners Joe and Dana have provided KHTS with quality embroidered company shirts for over 3 years. If it's new business cards or promotional products you need to enhance your image, Daily Imprints is the choice for you. Located on Lyons Avenue, stop by or call today, 661-678-0508.
Aloha, friends! Go check out Honu Coffee, home of the best cold brew coffee. What makes their coffee special is how their organic coffee beans are infused with nitrogen to create a smooth and delicious cup of coffee. You'll also find traditional bold coffees and island-inspired signature drinks. They're the perfect place to catch up with friends or just relax with your favorite cup of joe. Honu Coffee on Lyons and Walnut in Newhall. Stop by and say aloha.
Bob! I don't believe you.
You're jaded, Blanche.
Read my lips, Bob. You've had a history of exaggeration.
It's true. They're building Castaic High School.
Castaic High, like in Castaic, California.
That's right, Blanche.
Prove it, Bob.
Go to your computer, type in CastaicHighProject.com and get free and frequent updates.
What's that web address again?
CastaicHighProject.com.
With fervor, like you really mean it.
CastaicHighProject.com.
Have you heard about Assistance League Retail Store? For a good time and a great deal and bargains that are an amazing steal, there are friendly volunteers ready to share a smile. So come on in and stay a while. We take donations on gently used goods, and proceeds from our sales stay in the neighborhood. So for a great buy and a special find, come visit our store anytime. Assistance League Resale Store located at 24369 Main Street in downtown Newhall.
There's a very good reason Embrace Your Smile Orthodontics has been voted #1 orthodontist in Santa Clarita 8 years in a row.
Honestly, it's our team.
Dr. Megan LeCornu.
I think for me, what makes it stand out is when I have patients that come up to me and say, we have never been in a doctor's office that feels like this. Our team is a family, and we really get along, and we are really passionate about what we do, helping our patients get the smiles they want and deserve.
Dr. Megan LeCornu of Embrace Your Smile Orthodontics.
Embrace your smile.
EmbraceYourSmile.com.
I've always been driven to serve our country and our community.
Congressman Steve Knight.
I served in the United States Army and spent 18 years as an officer with the Los Angeles Police Department. I ran for Congress because too often I saw people forgotten by Washington. The crisis at the VA exemplified a bureaucracy that was out of touch and hurting real people. As your congressman, I'm committed to making our government in Washington work better for you.
My name is David Brayton. I am an Air Force veteran. 10 years ago, my doctors told me that I had to have a double lung transplant. It was a massive uphill battle to get the VA to do what they said they were going to do in the first place. Finally, Steve Knight got involved, and if it wasn't for Steve Knight's assistance in this thing, I guarantee you I'd be dead. Steve Knight is a veteran, and he's LAPD on top of it. I'm voting for Steve Knight because he gets stuff done for us.
I'm Steve Knight, and I approve this message.
Your hometown station.
KHTS AM 1220 and the new 98.1 FM.
Welcome back. You are listening to the Grief Recovery Hour with Sharon Brubaker on KHTS, your hometown station. My name is Sandi Atmore, and I get the privilege and honor of sitting in for Sharon Brubaker today. And I have a very special guest. Her name is Shayla, and we've been talking about a very deep topic, a very deep subject. But, you know, I feel like this subject, #MeToo, sexual abuse, is such an important topic because we see it, right? It's everywhere. There's so many stories now. It's in the entertainment industry. We've seen a lot coming forward with priests in Catholicism, and there's a lot of media right now and attention around that. But I think what's different about what we're talking about today is we're talking about the other side of that. We're talking about the losses, the things that we lose when we experience this kind of loss, and then what we can gain by grieving those things. How do we heal? We're here to say there's life on the other side of that kind of experience. And so I think this is really important for people to hear, because one of the things that I know about what's happening even in the media right now, is that a lot of people are getting triggered. A lot of, there's a lot of women like me that experienced sexual abuse, pushed it out of their head, kept on moving in their lives, and now you kind of can't get away from it because it's everywhere. And a lot of people are experiencing triggers and are either maybe having a memory come to the surface, or going, wow, that thing that I tucked away, I knew it happened, I just never wanted to look at it. I can't stop crying. And so I think it's really important that we talk about this piece, because I think it's important for people to understand. Wouldn't you agree with that, Shayla?
Absolutely. I mean, I've talked to many people, and for some reason I think the more you do your own healing, the more of a magnet you become for people that just want to be heard and to be validated in this.
Yeah.
But we all have this in common of just the fear that if we start this journey of healing, and if we step out of denial, or if we actually start addressing the deep pain, that there's no coming out of it. Like, it's just going to be this endless pit. And the only way out of it is to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and muscle through and just claim that life that was denied you through the abuse. And we were talking about it earlier, but just that all the things that I was afraid that I would lose, and that in fact I did start to lose as I embraced this healing journey. And you've told me this constantly, and I was like, I want to believe that, but in the middle of it, it just doesn't feel real. But just that everything that I've always wanted, the family, the healthy marriage that I didn't see growing up, the being comfortable in my own skin, having confidence, apart from what people think about me, not people pleasing, just freedom, all that, I was trying to get it with all the coping mechanisms. And I, like you said about triggers, I would avoid any kind of thing that would trigger me. And I just thought I was being a good Christian, not watching a certain scene on a movie, closing my eyes if they kissed, and things where people were like, wow, Shayla, you're really like, you never struggle with that? Like, nope. But it's because I put a blind spot on it because I didn't want to be triggered. But now that I'm embracing the healing, I do feel comfortable in my own skin. I do feel more confident, even speaking about this kind of topic where, oh my gosh, if there's any kind of fear of what people will think, it's this topic. This is why women and victims don't speak up, because there's so many misunderstandings and misconceptions and re-victimizing of victims in this topic. And here I am, like, very confidently speaking about it on the radio, because I've done the healing and I'm still in it. But I do have faith now that as I work through this healing and the wounds do heal, that I'm going to actually be able to have a healthy marriage. Whereas before I was having these relationships, I've dated multiple times, great men. It never worked because I was terrified of marriage. I was terrified of the triggers that would inevitably happen. So I was sabotaging in every way possible without even knowing I was. And so no way was I going to have access to everything I wanted unless I went through this journey. But I was putting this journey off for so long because I was terrified that it would end in that. And I would never get out of it. But so the hope is, oh my gosh, I actually see that you're right. And the people who've gone before me are right. And I do feel like, oh, wow, there is hope, even though it's hard. I don't want to put this off anymore, because the things I've lost, those were never the things that I've always wanted. I just was trying to make them into something I wanted because I didn't want to have to go through this pain.
I love what you just said. And I think it's so important for people to hear that. Here you are in the middle, right, of some things. You've had some healing on some deep things. You've had some other things come to the surface. You're in the middle of deep healing, and yet you're able to sit here, talk about your story, and say, I'm more confident now today than I was before. I feel more comfortable today in my skin than I ever have. And I think it's important for people to hear that and understand that. And I really relate to what you're saying because, it was the same for me. I was such a performer, and I was somebody that, people would look at and even when I was using, would say, wow, you've accomplished a lot. I mean, I was a meth addict and I was a VP of sales and marketing. I was that one that was going to be high on the success ring. And I felt so crumbled inside, and I didn't even know who I was. And yet I would say at my most painful moment of stepping into the truth of what happened to me and then walking through like what you're talking about, the pain and grieving what I had lost. I mean, there'd been so many things that my heart had lost. I was more healthy in that moment than I ever was when I was, trying to climb the corporate ladder. And, obviously now today I have a really wonderful marriage. I have this wonderful business. I love to get to help people. I have so much joy in my heart. And, it's an honor for me to be able to walk with others, through their journey. But I love what you're saying, and I couldn't agree with you more. And I wanted to ask you, kind of specific to the grief recovery process, and just for those that don't know, the grief recovery method it's something that you walk through. You take these steps. You're realizing like, okay, grief has more to do with than just death. So there's other things that I've lost, maybe aside from just death, though for some of us, death is our major presenting loss. There's many other losses. We've talked about some today. And then we're in these steps of understanding, like, what have I learned that doesn't help, right? Yeah. Some of the things we've talked about today, the idea that if I open the door, oh my gosh, I'm never going to walk again. The idea that if I just wait things out and give it time, I'll be better. I know, Shayla's talked about things that happened when she was really, really young. And here, she's now saying, hey, I'm in my 30s. And you know what? Those losses didn't go anywhere, right? So we talk about that. We learn ways that we distract, and then we get to walk through this journey of identifying and taking steps to resolve the emotional loss that we've experienced. And so for you, Shayla, in doing that, how did you find that helpful?
Well, I think even what you're talking about with generational pain that's not dealt with and how it gets passed on, it's been helpful for me walking through this journey and doing grief recovery. Again, just processing the emotions that are part of life. And I think society, maybe it's just America or maybe it's just all over the world, but we have a hard time with sadness, with grief, with depression.
Yes.
We don't accept that this is part of the human experience. And it's actually producing the sickness for us to squash those feelings or deny them or to hide them or to feel like we cannot share them in a community that gets it and that just sit with us. And I feel that grief recovery is trying to bring that community back to provide safe connection during the grieving process.
It's wonderful.
Because I feel like the isolation is what's killing us as victims, what's killing us as a society of anyone in pain. Isolation is not what we want, but it's been told that's either how we're going to protect other people from our pain because we're too much.
Wow.
Or that people can't handle it, so we have to handle it on our own. But if we could have a society that understands that we don't have to fix each other, that this world is full of pain, that there is loss and that there is grief, but it's a season and it's temporary and it's not going to be forever if we can just let it run its course and share it with each other, share the burden. Just being with each other and loving each other, and you don't have to be anything different. So I think I lost your original question.
I love. You actually said a lot. You did great. That was great. I love what you said. I love what you said because you're absolutely right. When you are a victim of sexual abuse, and we've been talking a lot about childhood sexual abuse, but as we know. Sexual assault, sexual abuse is not age specific. It can happen to us as a child. It can happen to us as a teenager. It can happen to us as an adult. It can happen in lots and lots and lots of different ways. And, as a child, it could even be just somebody maybe said something inappropriate, and you say that or looked at you a certain way or, wanted you to come, sit on uncle's lap, and that felt uncomfortable. I mean, there's that degree all the way up to, inappropriate touching or rape. And it's important that we understand that because sometimes people have experienced some form of sexual abuse or sexual assault and they don't even realize that that's what's happened. They just know that something's wrong. And so, it's important to understand that. But a lot of times as victims, what happens is that because of the misconceptions, because of the denial and the darkness, because we don't want to believe that people can do these things and others don't want to believe that people can do these things or that these really awful things happen, it can be a bit isolating, like what you're talking about. And I think what you said so beautifully is that the grief recovery method is providing a space where you actually get the opportunity to grieve.
Yes.
And that when you grieve is not a word that means I'm always in this state, right? If I grieve something and it's fully grieved, it means that I'm not in that state anymore. And like you said, there's a season. And I feel like what's so beautiful about your journey is that the tools of the grief recovery method have been instrumental at many different parts of this journey, because you've had so many different layers to grieve, right? Which is something that, I think we will want to talk about in a moment. And that is all the different areas that we often need to grieve, as victims. And I think the other part that's, I think, important for anybody who's listening is that I feel like this type of abuse, whether it's sexual, assault as an adult, sexual abuse as a child, has really far-reaching impact. Because even if I haven't experienced it myself, I most likely know somebody who has. Even if I didn't grow up in a family of denial, when I'm listening to the news and I hear this many Catholic priests have been brought to the forefront because they have molested this number of children, I am impacted, right? I think we're all in some way impacted by this. And in some ways, we all experience the loss,
yes,
of this type of loss or of abuse. I think we all experience that to some degree.
That's a great point. And actually, it makes me think of why it's so hard sometimes for the victims to be believed, is because society is unfamiliar with loss, but they are losing the idea of the perpetrator that they had in mind. They're losing the relationship they had with that perpetrator, because many perpetrators are well respected or have, other good qualities about them.
Yes.
And so, yes, I do think that hinders our ability to grieve when, you're right, there is a loss of even hearing about a Catholic priest or someone notable that's supposed to represent God doing something like this. It breaks our trust. There's so many things, but if we don't even recognize grief in general, how are we going to be able to sit with someone who's experienced that abuse?
I love that you said that. I love that. And I want to kind of reiterate that for a moment, because I think for me, and I'm sure for you too, one of the most painful parts of my journey was I had several abusers. I didn't just have one. I had several abusers. And not every one of my abusers was somebody that somebody would look at and go, "Oh yeah, that guy, I'm sure that guy did it."
Yeah.
Many of my abusers were people that were respected, at least within my family, or loved within my family. My mother's favorite nephew, my own father, all these people that, like you said, had this certain level of respect, or people didn't want to believe that they could do something like that. And so because they didn't want to face that loss, right? They didn't want to face losing, like you said, that relationship or that idea of that person. They in turn didn't want to believe me.
Right.
And that was another loss for me.
Yep.
Not being believed was very, very painful. It was very painful to already be wrestling with so much pain myself, and then get these mirrors back of that didn't happen. And I'm thinking, why in the world would I want to lie about something like this? Why in the world would I even want this to be true? It's like you said, it doesn't fit. I don't want my story to have this in there because it's so, so painful. So I absolutely love that you said that, because I think it's important for people to understand we're all impacted to some degree by this. And I feel like now more than ever, because there's so much media around this subject and topic. And I think it's important for people to understand that, if you're feeling things when you're seeing the media, and even if you're like, this isn't in my story specifically, I'm still, wow, this is still heartbreaking. Yeah. And I think we need to acknowledge that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just like hearing of a tragedy that happens to a child, accidents on the street. I lost a student, a young teenager to a hit and run. And that's actually, I think, one of the triggering events that precipitated the somatic symptoms and actually released a lot of my other grief that had been buried. And sometimes, I think you've mentioned this, so you'll have some other non-related event trigger the rest of your grief that's been undealt with. But it's a lot. And I think if we understand as a society grief in general, I think it will be easier for us to recognize the small things as well as the larger ones. Because I think the degree doesn't matter if we can all identify, we're all humans with a capacity to be injured and to grieve and to bleed internally or like emotionally. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just what happened to us. It's not who we are.
Yes. And one other, I think, quick thing we'll talk about before we go to a break, and then we'll wrap up with some other thoughts on this topic. I think one of the things that's really important too with sexual abuse is that sometimes, because society doesn't embrace, like you said, sadness, there's kind of this push to like hurry up and feel better, as opposed to, let me first of all get to, oh my gosh, this happened to me. This is really, really painful. And my heart needs to grieve. My heart needs to be sad, and I need you to be there with me. And I think for those listening, if you've got somebody who's walking through any kind of loss, I think it's really important, really, really important that we be there with them, as opposed to let me fix you or let me tell you something's wrong. Let's hurry up and patch you up.
Yeah.
Let's be there with the sadness.
Yep.
So we're going to go to a break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about this a little bit more.
On October 31st, the Church on the Way Santa Clarita is hosting Block Party Fiesta. Come hang out anytime between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. for yummy food trucks, giant inflatable games, a hay maze, rock wall, a toddler play area, and loads of candy. This is a free family event, so don't leave anyone at home. For more information about this event and the Church on the Way Santa Clarita, including service times and other holiday events, visit tcotwsc.org.
The big one is back. Circus Vargas, Circus Vargas, Circus Vargas. The biggest big top is back in town.
Circus Vargas is back with another amazing new show. Don't miss this swashbuckling circus spectacular, Dreaming of Pirates, Under the Big Top in Santa Clarita at Westfield Valencia Town Center, October 25th through 29th. It's family entertainment at its finest, guaranteed to thrill and enchant children of all ages. Come discover a world of pure circus magic where memories are made and cherished for a lifetime. See death-defying acrobats, daredevils, trapeze artists, jugglers, clowns, motorcycles, and much, much more. All under the big top. Don't miss Circus Vargas's Dreaming of Pirates. Buy your tickets now at circusvargas.com.
The big one is back. Circus Vargas, Circus Vargas, Circus Vargas.
There are many memorable restaurants in Santa Clarita, but 3 words stand out from the crowd. Mom can cook.
Mamá puede cocinar.
Mom can cook the best Thai food on this side of the planet.
Mama fait la cuisine.
No matter what language you use, Mom Can Cook says it all. Thai food at its finest, all your favorite dishes, and Mom's very own original specialties. Experience it on Soledad by the Canyon Country Post Office.
Mama 요리가 좋대요.
Mom Can Cook.
You've been assigned to plan your office party. Time to bring in the experts. AV Party Rentals is your go-to place for the most innovative holiday party ideas. AV's been planning Santa Clarita events from giant galas to intimate gatherings for longer than, well, since Rudolph was a young fawn. AV will turn your office party into a winter wonderland. See the latest holiday displays at Santa Clarita's favorite wedding, party, and holiday event rental store, AV Party Rentals on Newhall Avenue and at avpartyrental.com.
Who says fun is just for weekends? Come live it every day at Skyline, a new kind of master plan community with indoor and outdoor lifestyle amenities perched in the beautiful hills of Santa Clarita with nearly 1,600 acres of open space, also known as your new backyard. Prices start in the mid-500s. Come for our grand opening event November 3rd with live performances, food trucks, craft beer, and model tours. RSVP at life@skyline.com. Join us November 3rd and get a taste of life wide open.
Now FM 98.1 FM and AM 1220. Your hometown station.
Welcome back. You are listening to the Grief Recovery Hour with Sharon Brubaker on KHTS, your hometown station. My name is Sandi Atmore, and I get the honor of sitting in for Sharon Brubaker today, and I have a very special guest. Her name is Shayla, and we've been having a great conversation. We've been talking about loss. We've been talking about grief, particularly as it pertains to sexual abuse. We're calling this hashtag #MeToo, and it's really timely. I think it's really, really timely. But one of the things that we were talking about before the break, and I think it's important for people to understand, is what it means to help somebody, you know, when they've experienced a loss really of any kind, but also with the loss of sexual abuse. I think we should talk for a few moments about that because, you know, as a certified grief recovery specialist, this is what I do. I help people walk through really, really painful things. And it's an amazing, amazing program. There are tools. Really, the process in and of itself works and it speaks for itself. And no matter what the loss, no matter how deep the grief, it works. However, as a society, as Shayla and I have been talking about, the grief recovery method is really counterculture. You know, we don't live in a society that embraces painful events. We don't live in a society that embraces a grieving process at all. And we're really given this pressure to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, put on a good face. And what we've been talking about, you know, Shayla, is that especially I think for when you've experienced sexual abuse, you know, we know, right? I put on a mask at a very young age.
Yep.
And I wore that mask for a very long time. It's exhausting.
Yep.
It's not me. It's not authentic. It's not really living. And walking through the grief recovery method gave me tools to grieve what was lost so that I could step in and be me. And that's awesome. But I will tell you, it was hard to find other community outside of grief recovery method to support that. Would you agree that that's been true for you as well?
Yeah, I think it's rare. I think those who have done the work, whether it's through grief recovery or, you know, I did another program like Celebrate Recovery or anything that has a recovery focus, where you're digging into your heart and your wounds and you're really trying to process them. I think those are the people that I've been able to have space for, or I've found space for me, my true self, to come out and to be seen. And I don't think I would have been able to process any of this had I not been with you and others who have done that work and created that space for me to even feel safe enough to admit these things to myself, let alone to say it out loud to someone else. And I think, like what you're saying, that the tools that you can find in things like grief recovery are invaluable as a society if we really want to empower and heal victims and be part of the solution, instead of just kind of writing victims off as, well, that sucks that happened to you, but man, I guess you're going to have a tough journey. I've had family members tell me that, like, wow, I'm so sorry. Like, you have a rough journey ahead of you. Like, I don't even know what to say. And they wanted to be comforting, and I appreciated that. And I could see their desire to help, but I could tell that I was alone. Like, that's the meta message of what I was hearing, was that I'm in this alone. And I know that not everybody has done their own work, so they don't know how to go there themselves. So it's like, how can you have space for someone else's grief when you have been shutting away your own? And you can't, handle your own.
Absolutely.
So I don't fault anyone for that. I just think that's why it's so important that, even my last relationship, I was like, you seem uncomfortable with grief. I'm entering a very tough season. You don't have to date someone or be with someone that has as much baggage as I do. It's not going to change overnight. I know that. I'm doing as much work as I can, but don't feel guilty if you don't want to be with this. But I think at some point you might want to deal with grief because you seem uncomfortable with it, and it's part of life. And you could have the most perfect life and then have a child born with a birth defect that rocks your world, or a miscarriage or anything, that is unexpected and out of your control. And if we go into life trying to have a perfect, quote unquote, perfect life, we're going to be in for a rude awakening at some point. But if we can start young and teach even our kids these tools and acknowledge grief even to children, as we it's like having a boo-boo on the outside of your, you put a Band-Aid on it. Well, sometimes we can have emotional boo-boos, and what do you do with those? We hug, we talk about it, we allow ourselves to feel it.
Absolutely.
I mean, imagine that society. I'd like to.
That sounds wonderful to me. And I think that's really what we're trying to do is help raise the consciousness of the fact that, like you said, we're all grieving something. We all experience loss to some degree or another. And so it's really important that we understand that. And I think it's really important that people realize that, you know, you don't have to have all the right things to say to somebody who's in the process of grieving something. It isn't really about you saying something to make them feel better. It's just being with them in the experience. Wow, I can't even imagine how painful this must be for you. Wow, I'm totally here to listen. Wow, you're having a tough time this morning.
Yeah.
You know what? Let me just be here with you. I think it's more being with that person, not putting pressure on them to be in a certain place or have an expectation that, oh, I need to hurry up and help them not be sad anymore, but just giving them space to be like, I can be with you and you can be sad, and that's okay. Would
Yeah.
you agree with that?
Yeah, just even that 3 words, I get it. You know, like just knowing that it's not something that's out of the possible scope of human imagination, that you've had something like that happen. It's like, wow, like you said, I may have not have been through it, but I'm with you. I'm here with you.
I love that. Those are great, great words. And I just, I want to thank you for joining us today, Shayla. It's so, so huge and courageous of you to be here. And I feel like there are people that need to hear this. And so, your bravery is going to help other people. And I just wanted to let anybody know, my name is Sandi Atmore. You can reach me at sandiatmore.com, SANDI@ATMORE.com, or griefunchained.com. Thank you for joining us today. It's been great to be with you.
Thank you.